For this logic tutorial, I've created a jumping challenge for Connie and Cuthbert. Looks like Cuthbert's feeling confident. Oh! Better luck next time, Cuthbert. Let's see how Connie gets on. When Connie jumps on a platform, she'll only have a few seconds to get to the next one before it disappears. But to give the game some replay value, we're going to create some scoring logic. See that microchip on the side of the start platform? Open it up with L1 and X. This is where we'll build the scoring logic. These trigger zones detect when Connie crosses the start and finish lines. If Connie falls, the health modifier will trigger this global settings gadget to reset the scene. So Connie can try again, and all the platforms will be back in place. It'll be up to you to fill in the rest. Keeping score in a scene is done using a score gadget. Go to the assembly menu and select Gadgets. Open up Gameplay Gear with X and find the score gadget. It looks like a prize sticker with 100 on it. Make sure you don't grab the score modifier by mistake. Stamp a score gadget onto the microchip next to the finish line trigger zone. Then unequip the gadget with the circle button. Start the next step when you're ready to start setting up the score gadget. Let's take a look at the Scores Tweak menu. Open it up with L1 and square. It's a pretty simple gadget. You can rename the gadget by selecting the name at the top. This is really important if you have more than one score in the scene, but we can leave this score with its default name. At the bottom of the Tweak menu, find the button with the score icon on it. Hover over it, and you'll see it's called Post Score. When this button receives a signal, it will post the current score. But post it where? Well, if your scene is placed in a dream, the score will be displayed on the scoreboard for that dream. The score for this scene should be posted when Connie crosses the finish line. So let's use the finish line trigger zone to activate it. Create a wire from the detected output port of the finish line trigger zone with R2 or X. Extend it over to the Score Tweak menu, then connect it to the input of the Post Score button. Now when Connie crosses the finish line, the current score will be posted. Close the Tweak menu with L1 and the circle button. This score gadget is all set. In the next step, I'll show you how you can display the score on screen. It's all well and good being able to post a score, but we also want to be able to see it while we're playing. Well, I have a gadget that can help with that. By adding a number displayer to the logic, we can keep a live count of the score. In the assembly menu, select Gadgets. Close the Gameplay Gear section with the circle button. The number displayer lives in Movers and Output. Its icon is a screen with some numbers on it. Select it with X. In Dreams, logic flows from left to right. So stamp a number displayer to the right of the score gadget. Then unequip it with Circle. If you hover your imp over a number displayer gadget, a number appears on the screen. Select the gadget with X and it'll stay there, allowing you to grab and move it with R2. Move the number to where you want the score to display. You can resize the number with the up and down directional buttons. It looks pretty basic right now, but I'll show you how to jazz it up a bit later. First, let's hook it up to the score. Open the Score Tweak menu with L1 and the square button. Find the button called Current Score, then create a wire from its output port. Extend the wire over to the number displayer. On the left edge, there's a port called Number Range. When you plug a wire into this port, its signal will be displayed as a number. And it still says 0. Well, we haven't added anything to the score yet. But you can test that it's working by increasing the initial score slider in the tweak menu. Check that it's working, then set the initial score back to 0. Now close the Score Tweak menu. In the next step, we'll make the number displayer look a bit fancier. Score slider in the tweak menu. Check that it's working, then set the initial score back to 0. Now close the Score Tweak menu. In the next step, we'll make the number displayer look a bit fancier. To change the appearance of your number displayer, you need to tweak it. In the Tweak menu, there's loads of options for tweaking the appearance of the text, box and border. The first page contains all the text options. At the bottom of the page, you can select the colour, brightness and opacity of the text. You can also choose a different font for the number. Hover over the font slider and use the up and down directional buttons to change the font. On the other pages, you can tweak the appearance of the text box and border. There's lots of options to experiment with, but I'm actually going to turn off the box, border and shadow. On each page, just deselect the buttons with the eye icon to hide them. The Tweak menu also has a page for aligning the text. Using these buttons, you can get your text perfectly aligned. I'm putting my score in the middle, at the top. Have a play around with the settings, then close the Tweak menu when you're happy with the look of your number displayer. We've now got a snazzy-looking score display. In the next step, I'll show you how you can add to the score. To make the score go up, we need something for Connie to collect. A prize bubble should do the trick. Prize bubbles are ready-made collectibles you can use in your scenes. Fly over to the first floating platform. Now go to the Assembly menu and navigate back to Gadgets. Close Movers and Output with Circle, then open up Gameplay Gear. The prize bubble icon is a gift-wrapped present. Select it with X. Stamp one above the first platform, where Connie can reach it. Then unequip the prize bubble with Circle. You can scale the prize bubble with the up and down directional buttons if you want to make it a bit bigger. Now tweak the prize bubble with L1 and square. In the menu, find the option for Collectible by Imp. It's very important to turn this off. Otherwise, you could collect all the prize bubbles just by depossessing Connie. Now close the Tweak menu with L1 and Circle. To make the score go up, we need another gadget, a score modifier. You can find it next to the score gadget in the Gameplay Gear menu. Select it with X, then stamp one next to the prize bubble. Press circle to remove the gadget from your imp. Then move on to the next step when you're ready to continue. Right, let's take a closer look at the score modifier. Open the score modifier's tweak menu with L1 and square. The score name box shows which score is being modified. Find the slider called Operation Value. It's down at the bottom. The operation value is how much is added or set by this score modifier. Use the up and down directional buttons to set the operation value to 1.0. 1 point for each prize bubble collected. Next, take a look at the options for operation type. These are very important, as they determine how the score is modified. The default option is Set. This means that when the score modifier is activated, it will set the score to the operation value. So in our case, it'll set the score to 1, no matter what the score was before it was activated. That's no good for a collectible, so we need to change the operation type to Add. Select the button with the plus icon on it. When set to Add, the score modifier will add the operation value to the current score. If you want to know what the other operation types do, just hover over them for a few seconds to reveal more info for that button. And that's our score modifier ready to go. We just need to connect it to the prize bubble. We'll do that in the next step. For this next bit, we'll need the tweak menus for the score modifier and the prize bubble. So make sure you've got them both open. Put the prize bubble tweak menu on the left of the screen and the score modifier on the right. In the prize bubble tweak menu, find the button called Just Collected. Its icon is a tick. Create a wire from the Just Collected output port. Extend the wire over to the score modifier and connect it to its power port. Now when this prize bubble is collected, the score modifier will activate and 1 point will be added to the score. Don't take my word for it though. A good dream shaper always tests their work. But we'll need more than one collectible set up to test it properly. Now that we've set up one prize bubble and score modifier, we can clone them onto other platforms. Close both tweak menus, then select the gadgets with X. Now group them by selecting the button in the context menu. Now you can clone the collectible with L1 and R2. Don't make too many just yet, just a few to test their working. Once you've got a few collectibles, switch over to play mode and test the logic so far. Great! The score is keeping count of how many prize bubbles Connie has collected. We can now clone more collectibles in edit mode. If your score isn't increasing, check that your score modifier is connected and that it's adding and not setting the score. When you've finished adding collectibles, move on to the next step. Having a score has really upped the game's replayability. But collecting objects isn't the only way to use a score. With the right logic, we could use a score gadget to record fastest times. If you've closed the Score Logic microchip, open it up again with L1 and X. First, we'll need a new score, so grab one from the Gameplay Gear menu. Stamp it down underneath the first score gadget. To differentiate them, we need to rename this score. Open its tweak menu, then select the title to rename it. I'm calling mine Time. Just like with the first score gadget, we also want to post the score at the finish line. So connect the detected output of the finish line to the post score input. As this is going to record time, we also need to tweak the default scoreboard settings. They can be found on the second page of the menu. First, change the score unit to time. We also need to change the scoreboard order. When ranking times, the lowest scores should be at the top. So select the option for lower, then move the tweak menu to one side. To see the time on screen, we'll need another number displayer. But there's no need to set up a new one from scratch, just clone the one we made earlier. That way the appearance will match. Clone the number displayer with L1 and R2. Place it next to the time score gadget. To display time, we need to connect the current score to the number displayer input, just like we did before. In the Score Tweak menu, create a wire from the current score output port. Connect the wire to the number range input on the number displayer. Once that's hooked up, you can close the tweak menu of the score and open up the tweak menu for the cloned number displayer. As this number displayer is showing time, we need to tweak it slightly. In display format, select the clock icon to display time. The option Show Milliseconds is now selectable. Turn it on to make the time display even more precise. Use the options on the alignment page of the tweak menu to set the position of the number displayer. The collectible count is in the middle, so how about at the top, on the right? Select the score number displayer with X if you want to preview them on screen together. Looks good. In the next step, we'll create some logic to record the time. To record the time, we can use a timer. Go to the Assembly menu, then select Gadgets. Close Gameplay Gear, then open Logic and Processing. The icon for the timer is a clock. Stamp it on the microchip canvas to the right of the start line trigger zone. Leave a bit of space, as we'll also need to add a counter. This will turn the signal from the trigger zone into a constant signal, so it stays on even after Connie has left the trigger zone's detection area. The counter also lives in the Logic and Processing menu. Select it with X and stamp one between the start line and the timer. If you've played our wiring and logic tutorial, you might already know how to connect up the timer and the counter. But here's a reminder in case you've forgotten. Start by creating a wire from the start line trigger zone's detected port. Connect it to the increase count input of the counter. When Connie crosses the start line, the counter will increase and the counter full port will send a constant signal. The counter full output then connects to the start timer input. This simple bit of logic ensures that the timer will keep on ticking until we tell it to stop. In the next step, we'll tweak the timer. Let's take a look at the timer's tweak menu. Open it up with L1 and square. The timer requires a target time, but we don't want a time limit to complete the scene, so set the target time high enough that the player won't ever reach it. As the platform disappears after a few seconds, it's impossible for Connie to survive forever. So 120 seconds should be enough time to complete the course. Below the sliders is the timer type. Right now it's set to count up. With this setting selected, the timer will keep counting until it reaches the target time, or until it's turned off. That's no good for recording a fastest time, so change the timer type to the speed setting. Its icon is a curved line. With the speed setting selected, the timer will only count while it's receiving an input signal. This makes it work like a stopwatch and will allow us to record a finish time with it. The timer is all set. Phew, almost there. Who thought logic could be so demanding? Now we just need to record the time as a score. We'll do that in the next step. To record the finish time, we need another score modifier. Go to the Assembly menu, select Gadgets, then Gameplay Gear. Grab a score modifier and stamp one to the right of the timer. Press Circle to unequip the gadget, then open the Score Modifier Tweak menu with L1 and square. In the score name box, select the score you created to record time. Hover over the box and use the up and down directional buttons to scroll through the different scores in the scene. There should only be 2 to choose from. To record the time with the score modifier, we need the timer's tweak menu, so open it up if it isn't already. In the tweak menu, create a wire from the output of the current time slider. Extend the wire over to the score modifier tweak menu, then connect it to the input of the operation value. Now the operation value will be set by the current time of the timer. This time the operation type can be left as set, as we don't need to add the current time to anything. But the update type should be changed to continuously while powered. This means the score modifier will continuously update the score with the current time. Let's test it quickly in play mode. Remember, we hooked up a text displayer to the time score. So now that the time score is being modified, we can see it on screen. The only problem is that the time doesn't stop when Connie crosses the finish. So we'll fix that in the final step. The last thing to do is to stop the timer when Connie crosses the finish line. Create a wire from the finish line trigger zone's detected port. Connect it to the reset count input port of the counter gadget. Resetting the counter will stop the signal to the timer. As we set the timer type to the speed setting, stopping the signal will cause the timer to stop counting. If the timer doesn't stop when you cross the line, you probably need to set the timer type to speed. If you think it's a bit too easy, you could animate the platforms with action recorders to make it trickier. The reset count input port of the counter gadget. The last thing to do is to stop the timer when Connie crosses the finish line. Create a wire from the finish line trigger zone's detected port. Connect it to the reset count input port of the counter gadget. Resetting the counter will stop the signal to the timer. As we set the timer type to the speed setting, stopping the signal will cause the timer to stop counting. I think we're ready to play it. Switch over to play mode and have a go. If the timer doesn't stop when you cross the line, you probably need to set the timer type to speed. If you think it's a bit too easy, you could animate the platforms with action recorders to make it trickier. Or you could make some bubbles that are harder to collect, then set the score modifiers on those bubbles to award more points. Have a few goes and see how fast you can collect all the prize bubbles. To finish the tutorial, just select Exit Creation in the Options menu.